Hey everyone, it's the Nitty Professor here with my little dog Gorlami to answer the question that I'm not sure any of you asked, namely, what needles do I use to knit my socks on? Now, since I've been talking a lot about sock knitting lately, there actually are some of you who are probably a little bit new to sock knitting and you might be curious. You might find my observations useful, particularly if you are interested in knitting socks on double pointed needles, which is what I do. So I'm just going to share what I've learned over the years, which is probably about 6-7 years of knitting socks. I'm not sure how many pairs I've knit, probably at least, I don't know, probably a couple dozen. And I have a lot underway, which you've seen before, some of you, and you'll see again, but in the context of needles. Now, wood versus metal versus bamboo, that's one of the first considerations that we can talk about. So I'm going to share, I have this barrel program from a recent conference of the National Federation of the Blind that I can use here for a backdrop. So I have these metal needles, and don't shoot me, I did buy these at Hobby Lobby. Okay, so just, yeah, some of you don't care for this store. However, it's RLYS. So there you have it. On occasion, they actually do have a few supplies that I can use. Now, I have another pair of metal needles, which are arguably nicer. I have like one rogue needle. There's probably a story behind that. So I'll show you those two. So these, as I recall, are probably from Adi. Adi from Germany, very high quality needles, also kind of pricey. Now, let's just take another look here. What is one of the main differences? Why, it's the length. Okay, so the red ones are 7 inches long. The silver ones are 6 inches long. I think these silver ones also are probably maybe steel. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what metal we're talking about. Now, let's look at something else. So, I'm going to try to hold these sort of kind of flat. If you hear chopping in the background, it's because I gave Gorlami a chew. And a lot of times the bigger dogs, they all get the chews and she misses out because they steal it from her. So she's kind of excited here to have this little time to ourselves. You can tell, okay, we've got bent needles here, folks. All right, so now, when do I use the metal needles? I do toe-up socks. So when I start the toe, I use my metal needles to start the toe. And the reason is, so some people refer to this Turkish cast-on, which is what I use, Turkish cast-on. You can look up videos. My favorite video for Turkish cast-on is by Knitting Blooms. It's ancient. It was already kind of old when I found it. But boy, was I glad I found it, because it was like 45 minutes long. And it just was detailed, exactly what I needed to follow along every teeny tiny step of the way to learn the Turkish cast-on for socks. She even had information on there and like increases and the size and all that stuff. But when you're doing Turkish cast-on, now these, all my needles I'm showing are a size 0, just so you have an idea. I like my socks to be tightly knit. There's just no air, there's, these socks are gonna hold up, you can't see my fingers through there, right? It's a wonderful, closely woven, stitched fabric. So I use 0s. Now, some people use a 1, some people even use a 2. Some people, they use socks for different purposes. I always wear my socks in boots or desert boots. Very rare for sneakers. Boots are supposed to be roomy. They have a big toe box because you've got that ankle support, so I can afford to wear the thicker wool socks. And they're gonna hold up forever because I'm not gonna wear them like just on the floor. But some people knit socks for different purposes, maybe just to lounge around in or something like that. I wear mine pretty hard. So yeah, we use 0 needles. So to do the Turkish cast-on, I start with 14 wraps, so basically rows of 28, and then increase 2 stitches every other row till I get up to 60. Those increases are heck. And it's, really, there's a lot of pressure, forcing involved. Because, again, I'm trying to keep the weave, as it were, the fabric, fairly tightly woven, even though it's not woven, tightly knit, right? And so, yeah, so these, I have this pair, they just sit out by my knitting light for whenever I want to cast on another sock toe. These needles are at the ready because I still have probably 20 skeins of sock yarn that are waiting to be turned into socks. I started 4 pairs fairly recently, and this is probably one of the ones that has gotten the least far along. So, as you can probably tell, these needles are a lot straighter than these. That's because I haven't really used these. Now, there are 2 reasons. One is, so these are less forgiving. Like, I don't know. I feel like I need the give that these cheaper Hobby Lobby, needles have. The other crucial factor is that this 7-inch needle makes it much easier for me to do the Turkish cast on and the toe, the increases and all that stuff. I feel like it would fall off of these shorter needles. These are 6-inch needles, and it's like gives me insecurity to even consider casting on toes with these. And I'm not going to use them for anything else, and I'll tell you why. It's because I kind of hate using metal. They're really hard on my fingers. It's as much as I knit, I'll spend if I can, I'll spend 4 hours knitting at night. I have to take a lot of breaks so I don't, get carpal tunnel or something. But my fingers would literally hurt if I knit for 4 hours on a pair of metal needles, I think. Some people love them. They're really precise. You can do lace really easily with them. I do very little in the way of lace. You can get a really sharp tip and everything. So for some people, they're just a wonder. But I find they just really get to me after a while. I guess my fingers are just like too sensitive or something. So I haven't gotten a lot of use out of these silver ones. I'm not sure. I don't know. They're kind of hanging out there. These babies, however, they get used on a regular basis. Still holding up. But that's the only thing I use the metal ones for, is to knit sock toes. So once I get past the toe, I get up to my 60 stitches, and I'm doing the stockinette, and I get to the heel, and then I do my ribbing at the top. My favorite needles are these. These are from Knit Picks, and I'm sort of emphasizing brands less in this video and emphasizing more the features of the needles, because you can just look for the features. I'm sorry, my little system here is not working very well, but let me try this. So anyhow, yeah, so you can see these needles here. They're a nice shade of green. These are 6-inch wooden needles. I'm not sure. I may have like half a dozen sets of them, maybe even 7 or 8. I've gone through a few because one of the things that you do experience with wooden needles is that on rare occasion they can develop like snags. They can kind of start to like wear out just a little bit. So where they've been sort of sanded down, maybe you can get into like the grain of the wood and develop a snag. And then I've tried to sand a couple of those needles down, and I can get a little bit more use out of them that way. But after a while, I end up just throwing them away. So that's like a disadvantage of wood needles. But other than that, I really like using the wood ones because they're just less hard on my fingers. And by the time I get to the stockinette and all that, I don't need a 7-inch needle anymore. I love, love, love the 6-inch needles. And I love these Knit Picks ones. I'm pretty sure they're made in India. I've had really good luck with them. I have multiple pairs. Let's see. I can cough up a few more examples here. Here's another pair of socks that I'm knitting on the green needles. And as you can imagine, they don't work with every color. So that's one of their limitations. Now here's an alternative. Frankly, I don't know what brand this is. I picked these up in probably Denmark, maybe Norway. They're kind of a multicolored needle. They're also wood. I like them very much. They are very good quality. I almost want to say they're from Russia. I can't swear to it though. Very pleased with them. Again, 6-inch wooden needles. And I have not seen them in the United States. Maybe you can buy them on the East Coast, West Coast. I don't know. A lot of my needles I've gotten online because, Hobby Lobby doesn't have wooden needles. They barely have DPNs. Here's another pair that I'm knitting on those sort of colorful needles. I got 2 pairs. It might have been in Trondheim. I'm looking forward to getting back to Norway. Book 3 has a whole chapter that takes place in Norway, and when I was editing it, I was remembering all the little haunts that I went to in order to research the novel, and it was just makes me want to go back. Here's another one that I'm knitting on these Knit Picks needles, and that works out okay. But let's look at see if I can find them. So you can imagine with a pair like this, okay, I can't knit the sock on green needles. I wouldn't be able to see anything. And while I can do a lot of knitting without looking, when I do look, I kind of want to be able to make sense of what I'm seeing. So when that happens, then I have to resort to a lighter color of needle. So give you an idea. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but the points on these babies are kind of on the sharp side. And that isn't like my favorite because since I'm knitting a fairly tight fabric, I do sometimes use my, thimble finger to, push the needle through. Maybe it's not the best habit in the world, and there are times when I have to remind myself I don't need to knit that tight, especially on 0 needles, right? That's the whole point. But I'll tell you one thing I like a lot about the green ones from Knit Picks. And let's see, I don't know if you can tell, but those points are a lot more blunt. They're a lot more blunt. And that's one of the reasons I love the green Knit Picks needles. I would be really happy, so I think they kind of color code the sizes, which is fine. But I would be thrilled if they just made these 0s in different colors so that I could match them to the socks. So if I'm knitting a blue sock, I can use a blonde needle. If I'm knitting a yellow sock, I can use a green needle, or, just whatever. I could still use the 0s. It would be really helpful because you do need the needle to contrast with the color of the yarn if you, like me, are often using your eyes to guide your work. If not, you do not care. Like the main character in my novels, Striding with Book 5, she could care less what color her needles are because she can't see them. But here's another pair. Now, some of these needles are bamboo and some are wood. Most of my blonde colored ones are bamboo. And Clover is a really good brand. I do have also some from ChiaoGoo. And I recommend both. I personally prefer the ones that aren't so darn pointed. Some of them really are made for knitting lace. And that's why they've got the sharp points. So it kind of makes sense. But I sometimes, especially in the winter, I can stab my finger so often with needles like that they develop gaps in the skin, and that can be very painful. So I do prefer the Knit Picks green needles. Now here's a needle that I'm struggling with, and I will explain why. So these, again, I think they're bamboo. The points are a little sharp, but they're a 5-inch needle. Is it this one's at the 5-inch? In any case, these needles are a little shorter. I do not like 5-inch needles for knitting socks. It's too short because the chance that it's gonna, slip out is greater. And obviously with like 10 pairs going, they sit in their sack a lot and they kind of get jostled, and then the likelihood that the needle will slip out is greater. Plus, it's just a little bit less to hang on to. So if you are interested in a recommendation as far as size of needles, I highly recommend 6-inch needles for sock knitting. If you disagree with that, I would love to know your rationale. Might be helpful to others. Now these needles here, these are again 7-inch needles. They're too long. They drive me bananas. It's too much. I don't need that much length when I'm knitting socks. They kind of get in my way. They tend to poke me more. And the only reason I'm using them is because I only have so many pairs of needles. And I got to the point where I was starting so many in my desperation to enjoy myself that I literally, these are all the ones that I have left. And I'm not going to knit a pair of socks on metal needles. I will only start my socks on metal needles. So some of these I bought as an experiment, right? I was trying to figure out what I liked, and it took me probably a year to figure out that I preferred the 6-inch wooden green Knit Picks needles. So for a sock like this though, then I need the light color. So there's a place for the light color needles. And another thing that I might point out, let me see if I can find an example of this, is sometimes you want to be able to look at your needle and sort of recall who made it and what size it is. Now, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if you can even see this. I have to put on my fictional binoculars. I don't know if you can even see, but believe it or not, in the middle of that needle, if you look on it on a really bright light, it says ChiaoGoo, and it says the size. But it's kind of worn off. Maybe you don't care about that. But some people do like to have that reference. Obviously, in those dark green needles, you're never going to see something like that unless it was maybe, etched on there in silver, which is a thing. Could, but I do have a high quality pair of needles. Now I've gone through a lot of these. Not sure I'll be able to find them, but where you can see really clearly who made them, what the size is, and that's kind of cool. It's like a perk. Here they are right here. Now on this one, what you can see is not the brand, but you can see the size in US and millimeters. So that can be useful, if the needle got separated from its friends and, your cat was playing with it, which happens in our house. It's useful to be able to just look at that. You need really, really good nearsighted eyes, which is, mine are good for nearsighted. They're not good for a whole lot else. But they're good for that. Let's see here. I think that covers most everything with regard to my personal experience using DPNs to knit socks. So I hope it's useful to kind of review. I do prefer wood and bamboo over metal because it's easier on my hands. I prefer that the needles not be too sharp. It's easier on my hands. I prefer the 6-inch. It's like that happy medium of, holding the stitches on without getting in your way. But for the toe, I go with metal and a 7-inch because they're tougher. I can bend them. I do bend them. I don't care that they're a little bent. They still work fine for that purpose. And yeah, that's sort of I could never knit a sock toe with wooden needles based on the tight fabric that I knit. So I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions or other recommendations, I've heard of a lot of people using those like flex needles. I haven't tried them yet because I'm happy with what I've learned and sort of figured out for myself on the DPN end of things. Some people use circulars. I think it's 9-inch circulars that you can use for socks. I suppose you're not necessarily, unless you're going to use magic loop, I think it would be a little bit challenging to do the toe, but you can probably, you can Kitchener stitch with that. So yeah, there's a place for circular needles. Not for me. Not for me. I like the flexibility of the DPNs because it doesn't matter. You can have 2 stitches on here. You can have 20 stitches on here. It doesn't matter. Whereas with a circular needle, you have to have just that right balance between the overall length of the needle and the circumference of whatever you're knitting. And that's just not an issue with double pointed needles. It's like when Arnie and Carlos do those Christmas balls, right? They start out with just a couple stitches, keep using the same needle, and then they're up to like 50 or 60 stitches, and then they go back, same needles, right? You don't have to swap around. To me, it's just like cleaner. And my Finnish friend is like, oh yes, it's traditional. It's the right way, according to her. So in any case, that's what I have for you today. I look forward to seeing you chime in. I hope you're enjoying the opportunity to knit some socks, and have a wonderful weekend doing so, and we'll see you next time. Ciao.